Hey everybody, this is Chris from 2L Tech, and today we're going to begin with our first part of our video series. And the video series is Enterprising Your Home. And basically, what we're going to do is we're going to use open source to provide an enterprise environment for your home. And what we're going to start off is by the installation of one of our distros. I'm going to use Ubuntu as a baseline for this entire video series. And what we're going to do is help you install a DNS, a DHCP, a NTP server, and a syslog server as the baseline of your home enterprise environment. We're going to add more videos onto that, but right now we're just going to focus on the core aspects of your home enterprise. In this video, what we're going to concentrate on is the installation of Ubuntu LTS 16.04, and we're going to do a plain Jane version of this, and we're going to begin. I have my virtual machines set up already, and we're going to begin the installation process. So starting off, what we have is just the beginning portion of it. It's going to ask you what language you want to start this process in. I'm going to select English. What I want to do is I want to install the Ubuntu server, so I'm going to press install. And what's going to happen is it's going to begin the installation process, right? Which language I want to use is English. It's going to ask me what country or region or territory. I'm going to say the United States. It's going to ask me for the keyboard layout. I don't want it to detect my keyboard layout, so I'm just going to say no. I'm going to select my own keyboard layout manually. I'm going to select US English, English US. And again, the layout matching my keyboard machine is going to be English US, right? So I just went through and it's going to check the hardware for me. This is a virtual machine, so it's no big deal. Essentially, you're going to be able to put Ubuntu server on any hardware that you have out there. Obviously, it's going to perform better with more beefier hardware than hardware that's more legacy. So, your mileage with Ubuntu may vary. This is a virtualized environment, so this should go relatively quickly. So now it's just going to go ahead and auto configure the IPv6, and it's going to configure the DHCP, right? I already have a DHCP running in the background, so it's obviously going to pick up a DHCP address. This is going to have your host name. Now, just a few points I just want to make here. Depending on the type of system you're going to build, my preference and what I would recommend, my pro tip is to name the system whatever you're going to have the system do, right? So if you're going to run a DNS server, the host name would be DNS01 or whatever. If you're going to run a DHCP server, DHCP01 or NTP, and etc. However you want to do it is fine. If you want to do Mike's DNS, that's fine too. Whatever it is, this is obviously how you want to name it. For this particular setup, I'm just going to run test, and that's going to be the host name of this system, and we're going to continue. Now it's going to ask you for the full name of your user. You can take this opportunity right now and to put your whole full name on here. This account is going to be the Sudo account as well. It's going to be the admin account. So just have it whatever you want to name it. So this I'm just going to name it Chris. And my user account name is going to be Chris. And we're going to continue. And then it's going to ask you for the password. My recommendation for passwords, even though right now I'm not doing this, I would recommend for a way longer password, somewhere around the length of 10 to 14 characters, alphanumeric with special characters. Um, Typically, what I find easiest is to have a phrase. So we're going to get more into that in later videos, but for right now, have a password that most suits you. and then we're going to redo the we're going to re-enter the password to verify, and then continue. It's going to ask you if you want to encrypt your home directory. Typically, I tend to say yes here. Does it matter at this point in time? Not really, because this is just going to be a server, and probably you're going to have this server just to do specific things. If this is a DNS or a DCP, this is really not necessary. So I'm just going to go ahead and click no. Again, it's going to ask me my physical location. I'm currently, my time zone is America, Chicago. So I'm going to click yes for as correct. So now we're going to get to the part where it's going to partition the hard drive. You can do either method. Um, if you're going to do a storage type of system, I would definitely recommend doing the guided encrypted. But in this case, this is just a basic baseline server. And for the sake of simplicity, we're going to just go ahead and do the guided, use the entire disk and without using the LVM. We're going to explain this more in later videos, but for right now, just to keep this a basic system install, we're just going to keep it that way. Um, then you're going to select the disk. In my case, it's just a 10 gig virtual hard drive that I have. We're going to install Ubuntu on. And then it's going to ask you if you want to write these changes. And based on the swap and the file partition that it has on there, the ext4. And for me, this is fine. And we're going to go ahead and select yes. Now, now it's just going to copy the installation files that it needs, so that we can begin the installation process. Now, you might have noticed that the hard drive size that I chose was 10 gigs. Um, Typically on your regular system, you won't do that. However, for these types of servers, what I like to baseline some of my environment servers, I would typically use them anywhere between 12 and 20 gigs, with the exception of a syslog. Typically, a syslog, I would do it for a lot longer than that, a lot bigger than that, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 60, 80, or 100 gigs. And the reason for that is basically you're going to have that syslog server pull all the syslog messages from all your other devices, and this may include your networking devices. So you want or your firewall. So you might want to have adequate space to store those messages. So just keep that in mind. But basically, for a DNS server that you're really gonna rarely use outside of making update changes and upgrading the software, a 12 gig hard drive is perfectly adequate. I mean, you don't have to make it go overboard with it. So right now it's just configuring some configuring and installing packages inside your system. These are basic packages at this point in time. Now it's just configuring your app, and this is just basically asking, does if your proxy is going to affect the system being able to get access to software updates. And I don't have a proxy running, so this part I'm not really worried about. So we're going to go ahead and just hit continue. Typically, in a lot of places, probably in your own home, you probably are not running a proxy server. And if you are, we're going to go get into that in some other security videos. Typically, you want to do that as transparent so that um, everybody has to use the proxy server. So now we're going to get into selecting and installing software. Now, at this point, the system is going to ask you whether or not you want to have automatic updates, no automatic updates, or just security updates. For me, I would highly recommend installing security updates automatically. That's just because you want to keep your system as secure as possible without you having to touch it. So this is my go-to and my default. You can change it however you want. So now it's just gonna install the packages that it needs, and now it's gonna ask you to select packages. So typically, you will run this if you want to choose a specific system. And in this case, you have DNS server, LAMP server, mail server, whatever the case may be. But for the sake of this video, we're not going to choose any of these. As a matter of fact, the standard system utils, we're going to get that out. And the reason being is because I want to show you that in later videos. And since this video is going to be the baseline for all the rest of the videos in this series, I just want to make sure everything is the same across the board. So we're not going to have any default packages installed other than the basic minimum server install for Ubuntu. So that's just going to go in, retrieve all the packages that it needs, and start installing them. This will take different time. It will take to install based on your system, based on the amount of packages that you have installed, and basically whether you're running this from a CD-ROM or a thumb drive. And this should go by pretty quickly. Once this is installed, what ends up happening is the system is gonna ask you to put a bootloader on, and that typically is grub. And basically what grub is it's a master boot partition on your hard drive, and when the system goes into post, it looks for a bootable hard drive, and that's what grub is going to be. And once you get into grub, you'll be able to load the Ubuntu operating system. And so that's basically what that is. Now once it starts cleaning up, it'll get into the grub installation menu. Here it is, right? So it's going to ask you if you want to install grub bootloader to the master boot record. I'm going to say yes. This is just for the sake of simplicity and making and baselining this whole configuration set. This is finishing up the configuration, and once this is finished, it's going to ask you to reboot this system. Now, some may be wondering, why did we choose Ubuntu? Why didn't we choose any other distros, and I'll get to that here momentarily. So the installation is complete. It's time to reboot your system, and it's just asking you to make sure you remove any of the media, the installation media that you have, any CD-ROMs, floppies, USBs, whatever the case may be, so that once I hit continue, once it restarts, just pull whatever that media is. I'm running this in a virtual machine, so I don't have to do that. It's gonna disconnect that optical slash USB drive automatically. So let's finish this up. So why Ubuntu versus any of the other Linux distros? Honestly, right now the only reason is just to kind of get to the point where um, we can just baseline this out. And because Ubuntu has a long-term LTS release, and you know you're going to get support for 5 years for it, and it's regularly updated with the more recent kernels, it was a good fit. But that's not to say that you can't use um, CentOS or SUSE or Scientific Linux or any derivative thereof, or even Arch. However, for the sake of just kind of get this and out, and to help newcomers into Linux, we're just going to use the Ubuntu LTS version. So now that my system rebooted, I'm going to just test the login so you know that I didn't jack this up, and you know this is pretty legit. So there we are. So folks, the next video is going to encompass how do we harden the system and how we baseline the system. So if this was informative for you, put a like in there. If you like what you saw, please support us, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.